just a bloke in a bar.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of Bloke in a Bar. Now, before we get into it, Origin, live, free and exclusive on 9 now. You can watch it on your web browser, on your computer. You can watch it on your app, on your phone, and obviously you can watch it on free-to-air TV as well. So live, exclusive and free. Origin, the biggest and best sporting event in the country. But I could not be more stoked to have the great Darren Lockyer on the show. How you going, brother?
I'm good, DK. It's been a while since I've had worked with you.
Yeah, so, mate, it's been a long time. Finally wrangled you in.
Yeah, I do remember, I think when you first started this podcast, you might have texted me and I left you hanging. I sort of, one of those things where it got a week past and I didn't respond, and then I hear this bloke in the bar thing starting to become a real thing, and I thought, I need to get back to that bloke at some point. Anyway, we're here now.
Yeah, we're here. Well, yeah, eventually did message back and say, sorry, mate, I missed your message, but it's I would have messaged you around a time where podcasts weren't really a thing.
I wouldn't even know what they were. I mean, I'm still only just learning what they are. They're obviously getting more and more popular, and obviously you do a really good job with yours, hence the reason why Bloke in the Bar is getting a fair bit of airtime. So I feel privileged to be here.
Oh, thanks, bro. Thank you. Mate, how's it, obviously you're with the Broncos, you're a director on the board.
Yep.
Does that take up a lot of your day-to-day now? What's the kind of day-to-day for you at the moment?
I wouldn't take up a lot of day-to-day. There was a few years, probably about 3 years of really hard times for the Broncos, so that took a fair bit of, mental strain on things, and it was obviously the club going through that difficult period, and it wasn't just the board members, but there was people in the building, whether they were players or administration staff. It was a really tough time. You learn a lot more when you're going through those tough times, so it's good to be out of that and going better on the field, and the business is strong. From my perspective, my daily movements they're various. I work in the property game. I have investments in other businesses, and I obviously cover the football with 9. And so there's a bit of diversity there, but I enjoy it.
And you're on the selection board for Queensland?
I'm a selector for Queensland. That's correct. Look, I think 20, 30 years ago, the selectors probably picked the team and the coach coached the team, where I think it's a little bit different these days. The coach obviously has his, assistants, and they have a good grasp on the team they want to use. But myself and Gene Miles, he's the other selector, we act as a sounding board. We put our opinions and our 2 bobs in there. But at the end of the day, I think the coach, and particularly with someone like Billy, who watches the game and works in the game all the time, he's got his finger on the pulse.
Thoughts on the Origin sites?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there that are surprised by a few, because there's a lot of conversation around pick and stick with Queensland. It was only today I was saying to someone, I just think maybe we are getting a bit more depth and a few more options in key positions, and hence the reason why there's a few changes.
Yeah, wow. It was a big... I was shocked, I'll be honest. I was shocked. But from a Broncos perspective, to get Reece Walsh under Billy for a little bit, I don't mind it.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think Reece, we see a lot of what Reece brings. Is Billy was the same when he was coming through at the start of his career. So I think it'd be awesome for Reece to go through the week with Billy, and hopefully it's more than just this week. But I think he'll come back a more confident player for the Broncos, which he doesn't lack confidence, but he probably comes back a more complete player.
Yeah. What would be, if you were in the changing room and, obviously you played Origin at fullback at 6, what would be something you would say to Reece before his debut?
I think his focus would be, his talk and defence. Really, that's such a key part at Origin, because fatigue sets in pretty quickly because of the intensity it's played at. So they're relying on him to give them direction while they're under duress. And I think it's play your natural game with the footy. Defensively, do your job and do it really well with your communication, and then just play with discipline. You don't need to. You need to wait for the moment that fatigue sets in, and you'll see things. Don't try and force it.
Yeah, mate, I cannot wait. Okay, what about your thoughts on the Blues selection? A few bombshells there. Ex-Bronco, Tavita Pangai Jr. gets selected to debut.
Yeah, well, he's earned it. He's played. I think he's, a bit like our David Fafita. He's probably the fittest he's been for a while, and he's obviously. I think Freddie would have spoken to Gus a little bit about him, and sort of thought, well, ask the questions of Gus. Do you think he's up to it? And he's been around a long time, Gus. So I don't know for sure, but I reckon there would have been a conversation there. So Tavita. He's got a bit of history with some Broncos in terms of being up here, and so he'll be with Payne, but he'll be up against Paddy Carrigan, and I'm sure Paddy's going to want to, and Tom Flegler.
Yeah,
they're probably going to want to make their presence felt.
Mate, I cannot wait. So good. That's obviously next week, guys. Live. Oh no, it'll be actually tomorrow when this drops. It'll be tomorrow, live and free on 9. Mate, take us back to a young fella, born in Brizzy.
Yeah, born here. My dad was an AFL sort of player. He played for Morningside here. So I grew up here for the first 8 years of my life, and I played AFL as a 7-year-old, and then Mum and Dad decided to move west to take up a new job.
Yeah.
There's a truck stop in a town called Wandoan. And that's where I started rugby league, because they didn't play any other game other than rugby league. So AFL was over for me at that point, and that's where I changed to rugby league. So I had 2 younger brothers, and I had a really good upbringing, being in the country. I was Wandoan for 4 years and then 7 years in Roma.
Was it in your head? You're playing AFL. You're clearly probably enjoying it. Were you? I guess if you had the choice at that stage, let's say league and AFL were there, which one do you reckon you would have chosen? At that stage?
AFL every day of the week.
Wow.
I was shattered when I couldn't play. I didn't realise in Wandoan they didn't play AFL. I just assumed that was going to be there available. Yeah. And I loved it. I still like to get a shearing and kick it. That's where the drop. I've always been able to drop punt, and I learnt that at a young age.
Yeah.
And, so I just love the. I guess the freedom you had, and it was a very, like rugby league, you got to see what's in front of you. But AFL, we used to play, offside touch a lot.
Yeah.
At training. Yeah. And I thought that was a great game for your peripheral vision.
Yeah.
And it's great for competing, and that's what AFL is.
Yeah.
It's like offside touch.
It's funny because I did come from soccer. I know what you're saying in regards to the depth of field that you have to worry about compared to, I guess, in rugby league, especially in the front line. I think at fullback you probably have to be a bit more aware of depth of field to cover kicks. But yeah, AFL, it is a very, very different feeling when you're on that field kind of thing to rugby league.
Yeah, there's just so much more space.
Yeah. Mate, so you come across to league. Was it love at first, tackle, run? What was it like? Do you remember it all?
I don't. I love sport. I think that whether it was playing soccer before school, playing basketball or handball or whatever, I did gymnastics, played cricket. You just as a young boy, you just did it all that was, put in front of you. So, from that perspective, I think what the way I fell in love with the game was watching a State of Origin game. That's the first game rugby league ever watched.
Oh, wow.
And
do you remember it? Which one it was?
Well, it was in 1987. We'd lost the first game, and it was when Mark McGaw scored that try right on full time over the dead ball lines, maybe a bit before your time.
I was born that year, 87.
Yeah, there you go. So it's a bit before your time. But right at the end of the game, and Wayne Bennett was the coach, I remember him standing up going, I think he says, F, as in, it doesn't look good. But Mark McGaw scored a try, which to the naked eye, it looked like they'd gone dead, but it hadn't.
Yeah.
You look at the replay, it was a try. And we lost that game, but then we won game 2 and game 3.
Yeah.
But obviously it was an era, and they went on a golden run there. In 88, they won, and 89. But, I think the first player I watched and went, oh, how good's this bloke, was Wally Lewis.
Yeah, really, the king.
Yeah, the king, yeah.
Yeah, wow. It's funny how each generation kind of has their person that they absolutely loved or whatever, like the new generation coming through. Maybe a 12-year-old's looking at Reece Watt. Now, I'm not saying Reece is on Wally's level, but do you understand what I'm saying? Like, each generation has their, wow, this guy's bloody amazing.
Yeah, well, I just was watching, Wally in his prime, and Queensland was winning a lot of their Origin games, and, there was the famous try where they were down to 12 players. He gets the ball about 40 out and scores that one at the SCG. There's so many great moments, but what I loved about him was when the game was in the balance, he wanted the footy. And I thought that was something that I learned just watching him.
And so you moved to Roma, and that's when you made your first rep side?
Yeah, first rep side was in 1989, under 12s, Queensland team, and we played New South Wales in a 3-game series. And my first game, that series, that was my first time I ever played at Suncorp Stadium, which back then was called Lane Park.
Lane Park, yeah.
Yeah, it was the third game against them, and ironically, that we were the curtain raiser to, obviously, in those days there was reserve grade, but it was Bronco versus Parramatta, which wind the clock forward to 1995. I make my debut against Parramatta.
No way.
Yeah.
Far out.
Yeah.
And so as 12-year-olds, they let you play before
yeah.
reserve grade?
Well, maybe there was a game before that, but we definitely played a curtain raiser, Queensland versus New South Wales, under 12s, to a Broncos Parramatta game.
That's amazing. So do you remember that being something like really motivational of like, wow, this is really where I could be kind of thing? Or
yeah, I think maybe 12's probably a little bit young to think that I think we all dream about that as a 12-year-old. It's not till you probably get to 15 where you start to think, maybe I'm capable of doing that, and you start to work hard. But I got to go in the dressing rooms after the first grade game, and I think I still got the same autograph book. I went in there and got, I got autographs from Wally Lewis, Gene Miles, all these great names, and it was just sort of a moment in time which I'll never forget.
Yeah.
And probably motivates you to go, well, I'd love to be doing that myself one day.
Yeah. And, okay, so under 12s, and then when does it come to a point where, so you made your first grade debut at 15, 5'8", for the Roma club. Is that, because you would have been against men then as well, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Was that when it started to kind of click for you? And also, were you a fullback coming up, or were you a 5'8" coming up, or both?
At that point in time, I played in the halves. So when I first started the league, I was a centre. Then as I sort of probably didn't grow as much as the others, I went into the halves and was a halfback for a period of time. And then I made my debut in Roma for Cities as a 15-year-old, and I was playing against 40-year-old men. And these guys couldn't care how old you were. It was, they were tough footy players, but it made you grow up pretty quickly. I mean, you had 40-year-olds had your back as well, so they'd always say to you before the game, like, don't worry, we'll look after you. So you go out there, and I think there's definitely, again, when you play against men, regardless of, if you're that age, you're playing against men, it doesn't matter what competition you're playing, you're starting to think, okay, maybe I'm capable of doing this at the high level. It's
interesting how, like, you have this idea of, like, what the game will be like, especially with your debut. Like, I remember before my debut, I almost had this, like, mythology around this is going to be too strong, too fast, and then you take that first tackle and you go, they're not superhuman. This isn't some kind of crazy thing. And I'd assume, like, to a degree, that would have been you at around 15 when you thought, I can actually mix it with some of the best players of my kind of town.
Yeah, well, I think even when I watch games now from some of the sideline as a commentator, you look at it and you go, I don't know how I did that. I don't know how I did it, But I think when you go out there, I think the intensity or the situation just takes over, and you just get into this. The adrenaline goes through you, and you just do what you need to do to compete and survive in that particular arena. So, there's no doubt playing against men and getting through those games and actually having an impact on the game was huge for your confidence.
And then Glenn Bayliss, he visited Roma. Is that correct?
There would have been Glenn Bayliss would have been one of them, but the Cyril Connell was probably he was the famous scout he used to go to all the schoolboy carnivals, and he'd be the one that come and start having conversation to you. He'd keep in contact with you, and when you got to that sort of 15, 16 years of age, they give you a scholarship, and then from there, when you got to 17, if you were still on the trajectory they thought you were, then they go, hey, by the way, do you want to come down to the Broncos? And in those days, in 95, we had first grade reserve grade under 21s and under 18s.
Yeah.
So I came down to play in the under 18s. So Glenn Bayliss was a coach in reserve grade, and he may have come out and seen me play in Roma, but the first point of contact for a lot of us kids coming through the system was Cyril Connell.
Yeah, Cyril Connell also. So Ivan Henjak.
Yep.
I think it was Ivan and Cyril Connell that scouted me, but I went away to one of those development camps.
Yep.
And I think it was Cyril Connell that said, "Do you want to come and play for our?" At this stage, it was under 19 side. Arguably, look, I'm sure there are much better. Oh, not much better. I'm sure there are a lot of other scouts out there that have done some great things, but I'd argue Cyril Connor's arguably one of the greatest all-time scouts.
Well, I think Cyril, his greatest strength was looking for character in people. So he would have had coaches with him to look at the technical skill of a player and say, yeah, I like it. But then if you didn't have the character to go with it, then Cyril would put a line through you typically. So I think what Cyril brought a lot of good people to the club. And, you know, he's an old school teacher himself. He played for Australia, but he was the salt of the earth type person, and he wanted to see the individual's personality and character before he gave them the tick of approval.
It's I can still remember a little Cyril walking around the club and that. So good. Actually, I ran into Minnow the other day, actually, under in Suncorp.
Matty Middleton.
Yeah. Oh, man, I couldn't believe it. It's been like, 15 years or something. Anyway.
The mid dog.
Oh, the mid dog. One of the greats.
Yeah.
One of the greats. Okay, so when you do get asked to come down and train or play with the Broncos under 18s, you said, was there any other clubs that were interested, or was it purely Broncos?
I had some interest from the Bulldogs. And I think at that point in time, the Bulldogs maybe had a relationship with Redcliffe. So I come down and played at Redcliffe for a bit, just for a couple of trial games. And Redcliffe wanted me to come back. But in the interim, I got an approach from the Broncos. But the Bulldogs definitely, and Parramatta was another one. But I grew up following the Broncos, and then when I got to a point where I had a scholarship with them, for me, you know, I would have just kept going as hard as I could to try and get to the Broncos first.
Yeah. So you get down here. Did you move straight away in regards to in the under 18s, or did they bring you down and you did some, I guess, a couple of weeks of training?
I guess one of the upsides to coming down here, like you got 4 teams, so there's a lot of players, but we all trained together in the preseason. So I remember, you know, doing 400s and 1K time trials with, you know, Willie Kahn, Wendell Saylor, Alan Langer. You know, so to be able to train with those guys was it was awesome. You know, I was only 17 at the time. And it was obviously very hard training, but to get to train and sort of interact with those guys was awesome. And I was a apprentice carpenter in Roma at the time, and I was looking to get a transfer to Brisbane. And in the interim, while I was waiting to get the transfer, I was working at the Broncos Leagues Club, pouring beers with Tony Carroll and Shane Webke. So these guys were coming through. I was a little bit younger than them, but they were coming through the lower grades with me at the same time. And like I always say, I got a bit of luck, you know, because I was able to have a crack at first grade in my first year there.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, how quick was the transition from, we want you to come down for under 18s to, actually, we want you to train with the first grade? Actually, how did that all come about?
Well, a couple of injuries in first grade. You know, I think Kevy had picked up an injury, and what had happened was Ben Walker was a reserve grade 5'8" at the time, and Wayne said, I'm going to name you in first grade. And then Ivan Henjak was the coach of reserve grade, and then he came to me and said, I want, because Ben's gone up, I need you to play reserve grade. So we went to Parramatta, that was the game. But I was actually late to my first training session in first grade because I didn't realise, so I trained in the reserve grade. So the way it worked was the first grade used to train at like 2:30, then reserve grade would train at 4. Under 21s would train at 6, and under 18s would be like 7:30. So we were always home late at night. But so I just assumed, because I was starting in the reserve grade team, I didn't turn up to first grade training. But I got a phone call about 10 minutes into it. Said Calvin Giles said, "Mate, where are you?" I said, "Well, I'm not due for training until 4 o'clock with reserve grade." No. You're going to be on the bench for us. You come and train now as well. Wow. So I was late for my first training session. Anyway, we get to that weekend, and I remember I couldn't sleep all week. I couldn't believe that I was potentially that. And in that game, Wayne had dropped to quite a few of the first graders. So Terry Madison, Kerrod Walters was in the reserve grade team. So I couldn't believe I was going to be playing first game footy with those two.
Was this Clydesdales or before Clydesdales?
This is reserve grade Broncos. So
Okay.
back in those days, you had reserve grade.
Yep.
And so you were wearing the Broncos jersey, everything.
Wow.
And so I played reserve grade half time. I got pulled off and they sat me on the bench for first grade. And we were up by 40 points against Parramatta at Parramatta Stadium in 95. It was in July, I think. And I got 20 minutes at the back end of the game. There's no pressure. Got a couple of nice plays. I think I put Steve Renoff over for a try and maybe had a hand in another.
Did you come on at 6 or at fullback?
No, at 6.
Yeah.
I think Ben Walker came off and I went on and had a couple of nice touches, and I guess that was the start, But I was in and out of reserve grade a little bit that year, and the following year, same again. Like I'd come and play a bit of first grade, but I'd come back to reserves every now and then.
Was it because you were 17, did you say, when you debuted, or 18?
I was 18 by the time I debuted.
Okay.
Yeah.
When coming in and out of first grade, I'm not sure how it is for you, but sometimes it can be discouraging because you get there and then you feel like, oh, I'm back in reserve grade. Was it like that for you, or were you more just stoked to be in that kind of frame at that?
I think it depends on the coach
and
how they communicate with you. I think Wayne's very good at that. He would sit there and articulate it why, and you can understand why. You got guys like Kevin Walters, Alan Langer, Julian O'Neill was there at the time, Johnny Plath. So, like I'm just a kid from Roma. I've been given an opportunity, but I'm not. I'm not that arrogant to think I should be in front of any of those players.
Yeah.
So it was just part of my development. But he would articulate and communicate that with you. So you were totally fine with going up, in and out of first grade.
So that was the 95 season, 96 season. How many games did you play in 96 season?
I played a fair bit off the bench actually. 96, like I was that was when the coach started to sort of toy with me going back to fullback. So I think Julian might have left the club in 96. I think Willie Calm played a lot of fullback. And then I was sort of on the bench as a bit of a utility player. And that year, I think we bowed out of the finals in straight sets, and then Wayne made a few changes. But obviously Super League came along then too.
What was that like as a young fella with the Super League coming in 97? Was it did it impact you at all, or just you were along for the ride kind of thing?
All I wanted to do as a kid play for the Broncos. So the politics and that went around the game just went over my head. I didn't care. I just wanted to play for the Broncos. It was a little bit odd in little things like the jersey was different, right? Instead of Origin, you had the Tri-Series. There was just these sort of things that you didn't grow up with, and it was quite different, and you were a bit, it just doesn't feel the same. But I was in 97. I was 20, so I didn't care. I just wanted to, and that's when Wayne said we're going to play you fullback. So that's where I started my fullback journey, like week in, week out. So I was just happy to be playing first grade starting every week. Yeah, so, but all the stuff that was going on around the game at the time, which I look back now, was enormously destructive to the game, but I had no opinion on it at the time.
Yeah, just a young kid, just loving playing first grade.
Yeah.
That transition to fullback, because it's I guess to the casual fan, they would have seen you more as transition from fullback to 6, and almost that was the big transition. But I'd assume the transition from half to fullback would have been challenging as well.
I guess I was going into the prime of my in terms of athleticism. So I think when you get that sort of early 20s to sort of mid 20s, I reckon that's your purple patch in terms of. So I was quick off the mark. I was agile, athletic. So fullback just seemed to really work for me because of where I was in my career, and there was a lot of freedom playing at fullback. I actually really enjoyed it. But as it evolved and I got older and the legs started to get a bit weary and slower, it made sense to go back to the 6.
So 97, obviously, you guys win the Super League.
Yeah.
Walk us through that season as such a young fella. That was your first year at fullback full time?
Yep. No, well, we were pretty dominant, and we played Cronulla in the grand final. That was, again, different as a nighttime grand final, and it was played at ANZ Stadium, which is the old QE2. So,
QE2,
yeah. So you dreamt as a kid watching grand finals being played at the SFS and stuff like that. So again, it was a different experience, but nonetheless, I mean, the other thing that was a really good experience was we had the World Club Challenge. So in the middle of the year, the competition over here stopped, and we all went over to England and played. We played Wigan at Central Park, which was a great stadium, only fit like 20,000, but it was amazing atmosphere. We played the London Broncos in London, and we played maybe Halifax in Halifax, and I've been to probably the UK a dozen times for rugby league. I've only been there once, and that in the summer. Yeah. So we had an amazing time over there. I was 20-year-old. We were in the summer of England playing over there, and we had a good team, and we ended up winning that competition as well the same year.
Yeah. What do you, from the grand final, what stands out for you the most? Is there a moment? Is it when you think of 97 Super League grand final, is there a moment?
Look, I think there was a lot of questions after the year because the competition was split. So that was the famous 97 win by Newcastle.
I was going to ask you, who do you reckon would have you beaten?
Well, I remember when we went to Newcastle, I think it might have been round 6 or 7 the following year. Both teams had a point to prove about who was. It was effectively like an unofficial Super Bowl. Yeah. So I think we won that night. Look, I don't know for sure, but we might have played them again later that year. Not sure, but we ended up winning the Premiership in '98. So. It's funny, like 97 for me gets I guess stamped or qualified a lot more when we go and win in '98.
Yeah, okay, yeah, retroactive.
If that makes sense,
yeah,
we win the Super League Premiership, but it's half a competition. So in '98 we go back to combined comp and we win that. But for me, winning that grand final in '97 was obviously the first one for me, and it was special. But I think '98 was even better.
Well, walk us through the '98 season. In the preseason, was there chat about almost sending a message to everyone? No, this wasn't just because we were in a split comp. We are the best team in the competition. Or what was the chat like heading into the year?
Look, I don't remember exactly, but there was. But there's no doubt we would have discussed that we wanted to. At the start of the year, our goals would have been to prove that we were coming back to a combined competition, that we were the best team. And look, on paper we had a great team, and we still had to go out and do it. But there was, it's just one of those. And we went back to when the competitions came back together. Also, Origin came back. So that was my first. Debut in '98.
How did that come about? The debut Origin.
Well, the Broncos were being dominant in '98, and I remember. For game one in 1998, I'm pretty sure we had 11 players in the team. Wayne was the coach, so that helped. But that was another famous finish in game one where it was Kevy Walters put a kick late in the game. It was a pretty average kick, but Benny Eichen was the only one that really chased it, but he regathered the ball. That gave us an opportunity, and Tony Carroll scores that try.
The great Tunza.
Oh,
mate. I can just only imagine Tunza pouring beers, the yarns he'd be spinning.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Could tell a yarn, but we all need those guys in the team to entertain us, and Tunza was definitely that, but he was a pretty special player too.
Absolutely. Mate, I reckon personally one of the best technical defenders that I personally have seen.
I reckon the best in my eyes.
He was so good. So, your debut for Origin, do you remember how, the phone call or did Wayne just kind of...
Well, I think... Yeah, I just think maybe because Wayne was the coach and we were going so well, I'm not saying I knew I was in, but when you got 10 of your teammates in there as well, you don't... I guess the risk there was feeling like it was just another Broncos team. But, we had some... Jason Smith was a part of that team who was an awesome player, but we... winning game 1 in Sydney was obviously crucial to the result because we ended up winning. I don't know how many times this happened, but we won both games away from home. And New South Wales won the game back here.
No way.
Yeah, so I think that might be the only time in history that's ever happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You also win Dally M fullback of the year that year. I mean, what would have been 21 at this stage? 20?
98, 21, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Will and Dally M fullback, and around that time there would have been gun fullbacks in the competition. What was that feeling like?
Oh, I just think I was playing in a really good team. And Wayne's obviously history shows that he's very good at getting the best out of individuals. I would have been working on my game. I was 21, coming into the prime of my ability. So it was a good year. 98 was fantastic. We end up we won the Australian series against New Zealand a few weeks after the grand final. So we won Origin, we won the Premiership, and we won the Test series. So it was a cracking year. But 99 started a bit different.
Yeah. And speaking of your Australian debut, do you remember your Australian debut?
Yeah. Well, 98, that was the Anzac Test, and that was over at North Harbour, and that was a cracker for all the wrong reasons. But I got a little bit of luck there because I had a shocker that night. So that was Bob Filton's last time as coach as Australian team. I always felt like I retired him as the Australian coach because I played so poorly. And I was lucky from the perspective that I went back and played 2 days later against the North Sydney Bears, and we won by 60. I had a good game. I sort of was obviously very not distraught, but I was very, I guess, unhappy about my performance, and I had 2 days to try and turn it around, and I did.
Yeah.
My rep season, I was probably lucky that Wayne was the coach of Queensland because had he not been the coach, maybe someone else, they might have had their reservations around me being able to, do what I needed to do in that arena.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy to think that the debut wasn't the best, but then you obviously had such a long career after. What do you reckon you learnt the most out of that? Because you'd had such a good run of winning premierships, and what do you reckon you learnt the most?
When it's wet night in New Zealand, you gotta try and be very, conscious of the fact the ball's slippery, and I also. I went there on I played off the bench, but Robbie O'Davis got hurt in the first 5 minutes. So I was put in the game really early. I probably wasn't really ready for that. I was just sitting on the bench thinking, I can sit here because I remember Bozo said to me, I'm not sure when I'm going to use you.
Okay.
It might be after half time. So I'm just sort of thinking, I'll watch the first 40. Yeah. Anyway, I got injected in the game early. Obviously wasn't prepared well enough. And the New Zealand forwards, I reckon, had a game plan that if I got on, because Robbie O wasn't a big guy either, that if this little white fullback gets on, let's rip into him. And they did, and I dropped a few balls.
And obviously winning the premiership that year. What do you remember from that grand final? Was it a relief? Was it
in 98? Yeah. I think we were down at half time. The Dogs had us down, I think maybe 10-8. I think a relief because we were dominant all year. And I think at half time, we were probably a bit worried about what was going to happen. So when we won it, and I think at that point in time, that was a record score what we won by, we really turned it on the second half. But I just think it probably, like I said before, I think 97, it just reinforced to us what we set out to do to prove that, we were the best team in the competition.
And so 99 rolls around?
Yeah.
What was that year like?
It started off shocking because we had, back-to-back premiership hangover. We lost. In the first 10 rounds, we won one game.
Wow.
Yeah. So we had a draw and we'd won one game in the first 10 rounds.
No way.
And then we won 13 straight. But that was after Alf retired. Alf retired. I remember with the night we drew. Ben Walker kicked a goal from the sideline to draw a game against the Cowboys. And obviously because we were going so bad, Al felt bad about it all and he said, I'm done.
Really?
He retired. And then that obviously snapped us into action, sort of felt for Alf from a certain perspective, but that was a big decision and obviously had a big impact because we ended up winning 13 straight. we make the finals in 8th, but back in those days, first played 8th. So we played the Sharks in Sydney, and we got bundled out the first week.
Yeah, wow. What was it, as a young fella and with Alf retiring, do you remember hear it when you heard about it? Do you remember that moment or anything, or not really, just vaguely kind of?
Oh, you probably remember it more from seeing old footage and highlights, because I do remember, like, we were about to lose another game and we scored late against the Cowboys, and a lot of pressure on us because we were going so bad considering where we came from, and we hadn't really had a lot of change of personnel. And then, when Alf retired, which I remember was a press conference with Wayne, and he was obviously visibly upset about it. But I just think Alf had a big decade, 92 grand final, 93, and then a lot of success at Origin. And he won 2 more premierships in 97, 98. So he'd achieved so much, and I think because it wasn't going the way it was going, he said, I've had enough. And it was a big moment in time of the Broncos' history. I mean, history shows he comes back to us at a later date, but it was a huge call at the time.
Oh, mate, Alf, the great Alf.
Yeah.
Seriously. What was it, four premierships? 4 or 5?
So he won 4 with us, yeah. So
wow.
92, 93, 97, 98.
So 2000,
you
meet the Roosters in the grand final. Also, you minor premiers that year as well?
In 2000, I think, that was one of the last years of unlimited interchange, and we won the minor premiership by 8 points, four games.
Wow.
So we had guys like, Brad Thorne, Shane Webke, Petro, Tony Carroll. We had this big mobile pack.
Yeah.
And
just kept
unlimited
rotating.
interchange just kept rotating them.
Yeah.
And that's probably where the dominance started. And after that year, I think they said, hey, no more unlimited interchange, I think.
So the grand final, you also win. This is your first Clive Churchill?
Yeah, Wendell always says I stole it off him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Wendell reckons Gordy stole it off him in 98 too. So 2000, it was a pretty dull grand final. We beat the Roosters 14-6, and you look at the game now, and we always talk about building fatigue in the game, so the game opens up. It just probably that year, I don't know. I don't think that was probably. Well, that was the last of the unlimited interchange, but we won the grand final. It was the year of the Olympics, and I remember we played. I think we played early. I think the grand final was in August, and it was at the Olympic Stadium. We beat the Roosters, and again, it was a competition that was fully fledged, and we come out the best. So I look back now, the first 5 years of my career at the Broncos, I'd won 3 premierships, and I'm like, this stuff's easy. I mean, obviously, history shows it changes after that.
Yeah, mate. What about the Clive Churchill though? I know you're in a good team, but still, to win a Clive Churchill, it's such a rare feat.
Yeah, well, I was, obviously very proud. I mean, the first priority is to go out there and win the game.
Yeah.
That's what you want to do. You don't individual accolades are just a bonus. If it happens after that. So, to win the Clive Churchill is such a prestigious award, and to have that, I guess, on your resume, it's obviously it's nice, but it's I'm sure there's a lot of players out there that Clive Churchill for them is a long distance second to a premiership ring.
Absolutely. So 2001, 2001. How true is the yarn that you were approached by AFL, and were you ever close about considering it?
Essendon made inquiries with my management. Maybe they had history or knew the history that I played the game as a kid. Kevin Sheedy, I think, was at the Bombers at the time, and he was sort of known to think outside the box a bit. Look, and I just know, even though I played it as a kid, and even though I loved playing the game, that if you haven't played it for that long, you can't. In my eyes, you can't just go to another code where a kid's been doing that for the last 15 years of his life and just dedicated himself, that you think you can just roll in there. You might have some athletic ability, but you just can't roll in there and think you're going to be better than those. So it just wasn't something that I knew was going to be a success. So I just didn't entertain the idea.
It's it's crazy to think that later on, Kay, Izzy would end up going.
Yeah, they went, but they also came back as well. And I'm not saying there's a lot of skills there they would have picked up, but to be like really effective at a high level, to just go and play it for a couple of years, it's you got to be playing it for a decade. Yeah.
It's such a skillful the skill set, I guess, that you have to learn. You're right, like to have any impact at the top level, you're gonna have to
to drop punt really accurate off left and right foot, and I reckon Kay would have, because he's a fullback history, he would have had that peripheral vision about him.
Yeah.
He would have been able to see space a lot better. But like I said, you got to be able to kick handball left and right hand really good. So that takes a long time to get those skills and develop them.
Mate, lucky I was on the wing when I come to the league because I didn't have any of the passing skills in the league. 2001 as well. What was it? So that's obviously when Alf comes back. The SOS goes out. 2001?
Yeah. Well, Alf went to maybe it was 01. He went to not Wigan. He went to Warrington. So he got a bit bored and decided I need to play footy again. Yeah. So he went over to Warrington, had a couple of years there, and then 2001 was the Origin recall. Yeah.
What was that like? Crazy.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. Like it was, in history shows it was a masterstroke because he came back for Game 3 in Brisbane. That game was at the old QE2, and Wayne had obviously kept it. He'd been talking to him, but he kept it under wraps to everyone else until the moment to announce it. And he came back, and for a guy who hadn't played in the NRL for a few years, he was magic.
Mate, like to think, could you imagine that happening today? But like at Game 3, the last game to decide, getting an SOS from a bloke playing over in the Super League, it is just it. And what I love about it is it's such an Alfie rogue kind of maverick thing to do.
Yeah, Wayne obviously knew that there was probably only one guy that was capable of doing it. Alfie used to get nervous before every game. He used to, he famously throws up before every game, and he'd sometimes set off other guys because he'd be putting his fingers down his throat to go over the wheelie bin, and everyone would start. Some other guys couldn't handle that, so they kept doing it. But the nerves are there. But I think coming over, playing at home, playing under Wayne, and I think he just probably missed the big stage back in Australia, and he brained it.
And this was your first year as captain?
Well, it was by accident because Alf wasn't there, and Kevy had retired because Kevy stepped in after Alf, and then Gordy was next in line. Gordy hurt his neck, and then I was sort of, I guess, by accident, I got made captain in the short term while Gordy was injured, and. So, I remember when Alf came back, I was like, because he was always, to me, known as Skip, and he always used to have his own room. And I said, mate, do you want your room back? Yeah. He goes, no, mate, I'm right. He goes, I'm scared of the dark anyway. I'm happy to have a roomie.
What was it as a young fella like to deal with that added, not media circus, but you know what I mean? Like Alf's back and it's Game 3, it's a decider. How did you kind of mentally deal with that?
Oh, look, I think having Alf was the main focus, so he was a lot of questions were directed towards him. But having someone like Wayne who understands how to manage that expectation and deal with it, I think that's obviously we were fortunate to have someone like Wayne sitting above it and sort of saying, righto, this is what's happening, this is how we're going to approach it, this is how we're going to deal with it. By the way, we've got over here, we've got to focus on our football and get our game right.
What was it like? Do you remember anything on the field, like watching Alf in that last hoorah? Oh, not really.
I just think he set me up for a try. I remember for me the moment when he ducked under and himself scored a try, right near the try line. Like that was vintage Alf. Yep. And just sort of like I would, even when I was sort of still at that younger age, I was captain. You still probably have a little bit of doubt about whether he can come back and he had just as much impact like he did in that game that he did when he played in his early 20s. So it was phenomenal to see that.
And at this stage in your career, like when you look at all the accolades and everything kind of like piling up, it seemed like you hadn't had any challenges yet. But had you had any challenges yet hit you?
Well, they were about to come.
Okay.
You know, I think 2001 we won the Origin series, and then we go on a bit of a lean streak with Origin. So 02, 03, 04 goes to New South Wales, and obviously Joey and Freddie at the forefront of that.
Yep.
And then, you know, in 04 I changed positions too because we've had a couple of lean years in 02 and 03. So
what was that conversation like with Wayne in regards to the fullback to 6, right?
It was always, like, I think the media had always alluded to it, you know, talking about it. And I think when the Broncos went from winning in 97, 98 and 2000 to then being sort of bundled out in 01, 02, 03, there was, okay, well, what are we going to do to change it? And so obviously moving me to 6 was something that got sort of mentioned a lot in the media. So it was a bit of a conversation that Wayne and I were having on the run. And at the end of the day, like I'd just come back from the 2003 Ashes series, which I hope they bring the Ashes back because it's such a great series between us and Great Britain. I came back we won that in 2003, came back, and then, you know, I'd just been, I think, yeah, I did. I just got crowned Golden Boot at fullback.
Yep.
So the decision was, do I go to 5'8" in the best interest of the Broncos, which at that point in time, Wayne and I thought, yeah, we think that's probably going to work. I had to weigh up, you know, and I look at Kalen now, I had to weigh up the risk of losing my rep jerseys going to 6.
Yeah, wow.
But the Broncos was, at that point in time, was the focus to do something to see if we could make it work. And again, we got a bit of luck because there's a guy called Karmichael Hunt that was just come to the club. So when I went to 6, we had a kid who was, you know, I mean, his trademark was to run the ball back as hard as he could, he was 115 kilos.
Craziness.
Yeah. So we got fortunate in that regard. And 2004, 5 was still not achieving what we wanted to achieve, but obviously 06, you know, things come together.
And so do you remember that first, because you made the transition, but I think a lot of people forget, at least for the first year, the media was absolutely India.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Look, I got to a point in my career where, you know, you would know the criticism was out there, you'd use that as motivation, but I wouldn't be reading the paper, I wouldn't be watching the news, so it was there, it was just noise that made me focus more and motivate me more.
Yeah.
The thing for me going from fullback to 5'8" was always going to be, can I handle the defensive workload? So that was the biggest transition, and, you know, to start off with, you know, defence was always something that wasn't the strongest part of my game. So that's where a lot of the criticism come from.
So 2004, what do you remember about, like, seeing a guy like Kay come in, Karmichael? You know, when he first rocked up to training, do you remember anything specific about, you know, for example, I remember when Geordie Kahu first rocked up and he just had this crazy right foot. Was there anything you remember with Kay?
Yeah, well, Kay had that big step, a little bit like Benji.
Yeah.
But Benji used to use the step to step around people, whereas Kay used to step into people. It was like it was actually quite inspirational. He's this 17-year-old kid. He'd get the ball and he'd come back and he'd pick out the biggest bloke on the kick chase and he'd run straight at him.
Crazy.
And so he was a tough player and he was a good kid, and he came in and he got really good at the 3-on-2 for the fullback, and I think you played outside him, so you would have known how good he got at that part of the game. So it was pretty sad to lose him actually. I always felt like he started the Broncos at such a young age. It would have been great to see him stay there for the rest of his career. Yeah,
it would have been real interesting to see the direction of the club if he had stayed at that key position.
Yeah.
Because he was amazing. So 2004, 2005, and then the 2006 rolls around, and this is when was this when the great Dean Benton joined us? 2006, 5 to 6 preseason, and we went on that. This is when we went on that crazy camp. Do you remember the?
Yeah. Well, so
you would have been still out of reps.
So 04, 05, remember, I think 05 when the Tigers won it. They knocked us out week 2 of the finals. They went on to win it. But I think we finished the season in 3rd. So people expected us to do a bit more than what we did. And there was, again, a lot of criticism towards the club, including myself. And that's when Wayne made the decision to sack some of the coaches. Kevy was one of them. And then he sacked, Gary Belcher, who was the fitness trainer at the time. And that's when they brought in Dean Benton, and he had a totally different approach it's a very, like a very science sort of orientated approach. But I think it was a bit of a change to the way we did things, and I think a lot of people got a refresher out of it and got a new approach. And, look, 06, and I remember there was a lot of criticism coming my way in 06, not just at the Broncos, but, Origin, because we hadn't won a series in 3 years. And so there was a lot of criticism come my way in 06. Obviously, Origin was a bit of a turning point from the perspective of, at the end of the day, I pick up a loose ball in the game 3 and we win that series. So it could have been totally different. If that doesn't happen, maybe I'm not maybe I'm not the captain anymore. And then 06 Premiership, we lost 5 games after game 3 in Origin at the Broncos.
Yeah.
I remember, I don't know, were you one of the ones who went to Phuket?
No, I didn't go to Phuket, but that's when I was 18th man, I think, for the first time.
Yeah, so half the team went to Phuket after Origin, came back, and we lost 5 in a row. We're not doing that again. So that happened, and then there was a lot of heat coming our way after that. We turned the corner on our 5th loss. We played the Storm here, and they were the benchmark that year by a long way, and they only just got us. And we got a bit of confidence out of that. We worked in our defence, and I think the next week we went and beat Parramatta 20-0 down there. And then we went on a run, and we, I guess from there, I think we got beaten first week of the finals, but we got ourselves back. We found our feet, and we went on that run, and we got ourselves into the grand final and won that.
We'll talk about the grand final first, and then we'll go back to that. Actually, let's talk about the Origin. So there's, I guess, reports or whatever that heading into that 06 Origin, basically not the senior players, but the players, some of the players, key players, have been told, this is it. It's now or never. We're not going to allow them to be 4 in a row. Were there chats around that?
Yeah, Mel. This is Mel's first year. Mel was pretty transparent about it. He just said, "Look, I've got you here. I know the experience and what you've done and bringing the game, but obviously, we can't keep losing every year." And he just sort of put us on notice and said, "Look, I don't know if the selectors can pick you again if we don't aim up this year."
Wow.
And we got beaten game 1. A lot of people expected us to win that game because they had a lot of players out. So we didn't get the win that night, and that's when the heat really came on.
Yeah, wow.
And I remember sort of thinking, and Petro and Pricey, they were the other guys sort of on notice that we had to find something, otherwise it was all over. And we came back to game 2 here, and I remember I did everything I could with my preparation, just really diligent, really disciplined with my prep, and we won game 2 here, 30-6. And I played well, and the other boys played well, so we got a bit of confidence out of that, and just thought, well, we worked really hard with our prep game 2. Let's do it for game 3. And it's like a golfer. I think the harder you work, the luckier you get. And that the ball that popped up late in the game was, a bit of footy god luck.
Do you remember that play, or is it all a blur kind of?
Look, it's obviously a blur when you watch it, but I've obviously been asked to describe it, so I can remember how the story goes.
Yeah.
But so when we got, I think it was 14-4. So when they were up by 10 with less than 10 minutes to go, there was a lot of heads down in the in-goal area because we've been doing this for 3 years. So it was sort of like, where's the belief that we can pull it out of the bag here? And, I just remember saying, look, guys, all we can do is just let's kick early and let's go and put some pressure on them with our defence and just keep doing that and see where that lands for us. So got lucky from the perspective that Jonathan Thurston was in the team. He makes a break and he puts Tatey down the sideline. Tatey shows great wheels because he's funny enough, Tatey's probably one of the quickest guys over 100.
He's quick.
He was quick over 100. He's surprisingly quick. He had to beat, I think he had to outpace Steve Menzies, and maybe Eric Groth came over late. So it gets to 14-10, and we just go back to the middle of the thing and we just say to same thing. Let's just kick early, guys. Let's get our pressure with our D. Let's see what happens. I remember kicking a little bit early because growth was up. So, we're kicking early. The fullback gets isolated a bit, allows your team to get down there and isolate one or two players, and they need to get back behind the ball. So we did that, and growth takes the hit up, and then the fullback comes over. He goes to dummy half. So, we're just doing what we said we're going to do. And I'm standing there. I remember Petro was inside me. Tunza was inside me. And as Hodjo's about to throw it out of dummy half, I'm just thinking, whoever gets this, we just want to tackle them. We'll get up and get in their face.
Yeah.
So the pass sort of goes up, and then as it's sort of descending towards the ground, I'm starting to feel like it's going to land on the ground.
Yeah.
And then I just accelerate it towards it. And Petro's just there as well. So we're just all doing our job. And it just pops up in front of me. And so, again, like I said, sometimes you make your own luck, but if that sort of moment doesn't happen, it's a totally different outcome for myself, Petro. And look, history shows that after that.
Yeah, that's the start of the dynasty.
Yeah, it's a sliding doors moment.
Mate, what a... And do you bounces up and you're in the clear? Are you thinking just it's on you? We've done this. We've won this, or
well, it just happens so quickly.
Yeah, so quick.
It's obviously a great feeling when you get the ball over the line. It wasn't that great when Tunza came and
smashed
me
I remember just
with his chin.
Smashing.
He just chinned me, yeah. And then Shavosky still had to kick it, which was in front, but still, it's not easy.
Pressure.
And there was still a few minutes after we kicked the goal, so it wasn't home and hose, but it was a pretty special moment when the siren went and we'd had the game won. So huge relief, obviously, for myself. It was a great moment for Queensland.
Yeah.
And, I remember saying in my speech that, that it was the people have been hurting for years. So this is all for you, and, we're proud to do it. So that was a great moment, and as I said, my career at a rep level could have been over then and there. And
so, back to club footy, you're heading into the final series, and there's obviously the final against the Storm was an incredible, but the game against the Bulldogs where you're down, whatever it was, looked like the game was done. Walk us through the Barrow incredible moment, Hodjo to fullback getting moved, K to the wing. There's so much that happened that year that was pretty special.
Yeah, we were down 20-6, I think, and we went in at half time, and Willie Mason, as he likes to do, he's yelling out his woohoo and yelling out, "We're off to another GF, boys, how good." And Shane Webke was there, Thorny was there. Yeah. They all heard it. We all heard it.
Yeah.
And then we went into half time, and look, I think that just motivated us even more. But we needed something really early in the second half. And that was, there was Wayne, again, another masterstroke by the coach. He decided to put Karmichael back to fullback. Kay went to the wing. Just said, I guess, because Hodjo was so good on his feet and he could break a tackle. So I think it was just trying to get him in the game more. And he makes a break early because we needed something early in the second half, being down 20-6. And he makes a break just outside the halfway, and he gets a ball to Sean Berrigan. And I reckon the most famous ever try for the Broncos is Steve Renouf in 92 grand final, like that one where Ricky Walford chasing him. I think that's the number one try in my eyes because that was the moment we knew we'd won the Premiership in 92. I wasn't playing, but watching as a kid. But I think the second most crucial try in the history of the Broncos was this one of Sean Berrigan's, where he was. Incredible. If you ask Barrow, he reckons he's 80 out, but I think he's about 55. And he's a competitor. Yeah. And he's an ultimate competitor, and he gets the ball and he heads for that left-hand corner, and I can't remember who grabs it. Someone gets him right about 10 metres out. I think maybe Willie Mason might have been involved. But he falls about 5 short, and then as he's sliding, rolls over on his back and then puts the ball over his head.
How did he hold that?
Yeah. And that just started something, It just got the momentum going, and Canterbury's probably thinking, oh no, what's happening here? We've just let go of 20 points to 6 lead, and we just go bang, 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 and I think we end up winning that game 38-26 or something. Yeah, we end up just blitzing it in the second half.
Far out.
Yeah.
Oh, mate.
Yeah. So that, big moment there from Hodjo and Barrow. But Mace played his part too.
Oh man, I just like Barrow's not a big bloke either, so I don't know how. And was this pre-sticky stuff? Because it might have been around the time. Actually, no, it would have been because 2007 when I debuted the sticky stuff. But I just don't know how he kept it in his hand.
Oh well, like I said, he was a competitor, and you'd sort of. I remember when he played halfback. Back as a younger kid, you looking at him and thinking, he doesn't look like a halfback, but he just tough as nails. And he was, that year, that was the other masterstroke thing that Wayne did. He played him in attack, he played at hooker, and in defence, he played in the centres.
Yeah.
So poor old Stag, he got the
go in and tackle.
He had to go and tackle.
And you'd see Staggy's tackle count like 40, and it's like, how's a centre doing 40 tackles?
Yeah, well, Staggy played a huge role in that particular team as well.
So grand final, and you're just against a red-hot Storm side, underdogs, all that stuff. What do you remember from that 06 grand final?
Well, they were the yardstick. They were so good, but they were young. They still had these superstars in Slater and Billy, Cameron Smith, and they were just starting their careers. So, they obviously Bellyache had created a great system down there. And, I think for us, it was just we had a game plan to just get in the arm wrestle. One of the things we wanted to do was to bomb high into the corners to try and limit, Billy's effectiveness. And it was just – and as the game wore on, because I think when you go into a game and you're the favourites to win and maybe win easily, if you're not winning on the scoreboard, you start to get a bit sort of frustrated and you start thinking, why aren't we winning, And that's effectively what was happening. We started to get in front on the scoreboard and they're like, well, we haven't been in this situation for a long time. We don't know, we're not handling it well. And, we still only won the game for 15-8.
Yeah.
But at no point were they, for memory, in front.
Do you remember the field goal, that last field goal that just sealed it?
Yeah, well, I remember the run before it. Webby made an amazing Shane Webke. It was his last ever game. And
was that the broken arm as well that he had that year, or was that another year?
That might have. No, it was that year. But I think by grand final day, his arm was a bit better by then. Actually, I think 2000 was it.
Broken arm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 2006, that was his last ever game, and obviously bowed out, in great form. But I remember his run, and it's different. It's different if it's 14 all with a field goal, but when you're sort of 14-8, you sort of know that you still got to kick. You want to kick through the ball, but still know that if you don't get it, we're still in front.
Yeah.
So hit the field goal. It felt good off the boot. Had a little bit of a slice on it, but it was still 15-8. And I think it was only 5 minutes to go. You just never know what can happen.
Was it a relief that 06 because it'd been quite a few years? I mean, it's been a while now, but for that period of Broncos, it was 5, 6 years since you won a
6 years, yeah. Huge relief, but also, we'd lost 5 in a row. Everyone written us off after we'd lost 5 in a row. So a bit of relief, but also a bit of, a bit of a point to prove.
Yeah.
And then, that was the only sort of grand final we won where we were the underdogs. So pressure was on the Storm, but we won as the underdog, and that, I don't know, that almost, like when you win as the favourite, it's a relief. When you win as the underdog, there's a bit more, I think, a bit more emotion attached to it.
Yeah, it's a good point. That's a good point. What was it like to be able to send a guy like Webby off, so important to the club, heart of the pack, one of the greatest front rowers of all time? What was that like sending the big fella off like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just an added bonus, isn't it? Like I think, like I said before, individual awards are just a long distance second to a team award, and the ultimate goal is to win a premiership. So, you know, when we won, the first feeling you get, or I always just get, was the fans. You know what that means to them and how happy they're going to be. The pubs, you know, the kids, all those people to just be going off who barrack for us, and it's been 6 years, but you know, and then to look at someone like Webby and see him go out like that, well, yeah, it's just a nice bonus.
And so 2007 rolls around, and obviously in Origin, the dynasty started the year before. I'm trying to think. We made finals, but was it it just never seemed to click for us that season.
Well, my sort of career changed a bit in 07 because that's when I blew my knee out.
Yeah.
And I just we got through the Origin series and I blew it out at the Cowboys about 2 rounds after Origin 3. And so for me, you know, I look back now, I never came back, you know, with the same speed or strength.
Yeah.
So I had to sort of not alter my game, but I had to tweak a few things, use, you know, more of the head than anything. 07, I think, from memory, we got bundled out by the Storm down in Melbourne, week 1 of the finals.
Yeah, yeah. So 2008 rolls around. I mean, I guess we got to talk about it. For two, there's 2 reasons though. Obviously, we need to talk about the Parra try. I'll get killed or crucified if we don't talk about it. But also, it's my memory that sticks out for me from as a fellow player, and obviously you're a captain at the time. The heartbreak of that Storm loss that we had in the at the semis at Suncorp.
Yeah.
But let's go through the try first. Let's go through the try first. What do you remember from the Parra game?
Well, the game, like I remember, I was wearing 19 because I was trying to come back from my knee operation, and I was in and out of the team because I was having complications with it. So I had probably about 6 arthroscopes on my knee after I had a reco, just because I just kept having trouble with it. And I remember just before that sort of final try, one of the Parramatta guys had chip kicked and they regathered and they scored, and I think that's what put them in front. But I remember when I turned, because Origin was getting selected the following week, and I remember when I turned to chase and I just couldn't go with it because my knee was so... I knew in that moment that I was out of Origin. But obviously that game was still there in the moment, so I wanted to finish the game out. And, you know, it's one of those things where the siren had gone. I had not preempted, you know. I think there was a couple of factors there that made me do the kick. The first one was that Eric Groth come out of the line. So he's obviously thinking, I'm going to shut this ball down as they pass it, try and pressure him. And you started to lead into the space. And that's when it just naturally, instinctively just went, you know, kick it to my left and just try and put it into an area where you could get to it. And that was it. Then the luck with the bounce, and you did the rest. You know, you still had plenty of work to do, but I guess it's, you know, you scored some great tries that night, and I didn't really had the involvement in the last one. And, you know, but it sort of goes down as one of my greatest memories because of the effort you had. You know, my kick gets replayed, but, you know, you scored 4 tries, and if it wasn't for your chase and your speed and your strength, and, you know, the kick's nothing.
Well, I'll say that it was nothing, but it was actually the perfect kick. It was on a dime. It was on a dime. I remember the play pretty clearly. You know how, because I was still a rookie at this stage, second year, first grade, I kept pointing, like I kept doing these ones, like the tackles before.
Yeah.
And it's that strange feeling of like, it's my job to offer this option of, you know, I'm the finisher. I'm not a big winger. I'm a guy that give me the ball in a situation, I'll try and finish it off or whatever. And I remember pointing, but also thinking, having that, you know, that moment where you doubt yourself and you go, oh, maybe I don't want the ball to come to me to win the match. But then then refocusing in and just going, as soon as it left your boot, I just remember thinking the only way I'm going to get to the corner is if I just sprint, and if it hits me and I catch it, good. If I knock it on and I'm the villain, I'll be the villain. Because I just remember basically calculating in my head, if I jockey the ball and wait for the bounce like that, I'm just going to get bundled into touch.
Yeah.
And it was just a perfect, landed, boom. And then I just thought, I'm just going to run.
Yeah, well, again, sometimes you need a bit of luck, because if I had tried to do that again, the following set, I wouldn't have been able to get it on the spot. So just a little bit of, I think Gus was the one that said the footy gods were on our side that moment, and they were.
Mate, I can't believe how lucky I am to be in that position. It was, what a play. I mean, so because it was David Stagg that passed it to you too, wasn't it, off the ground, didn't he?
Yeah, it was off. It was sort of like, again, we're sort of in that moment where we're not real. There's no set plays. It's just playing what's in front of it.
Yeah.
And the ball out of dummy half, from memory, wasn't great. Was it Staggy? Yeah, maybe it was.
I think he got tackled by they tried to.
Yeah, they drew his arm.
And he fell over and.
So I had to sort of go back in a bit, but like I said, I just think it just, that's what felt like needed to happen, and you obviously did your part. So it was I think a lot of people, there's obviously clubs that have got plays or that are, they're etched in their history, and because you scored 4 that night. So I think obviously the way the game finished obviously plays its part, but you scored 4 tries. So a lot of people refer to the night Denton Kemp scored 4 and obviously scored the winner. So I think that's a game a lot of Broncos supporters remember.
Yeah, it's crazy because it was just a normal season game. I don't think nothing on the line.
But it was highly entertaining. I think that
they came back, didn't they?
They came back. They came back, and so it was a good game, and obviously a great advertisement for the game. But I think a lot of people remember the night Denton Kemp scored 4.
Mate, I keep reminding them. Don't worry about it. So later in that year, though, I don't know if you remember this, but Wayne sat us all down in a room, and I think so. We went on a run, won some games, and then we went on a bit of a bad patch. It was like 2 or 3 games where I think we lost. And I remember Wayne bringing us into the video room, the video room of the Bronx there. I think it's probably changed by now, and basically saying to us, boys, like, if you want to start thinking about Mad Monday, let me know. We just all got to be together, because if you want to do it, I'll get on board. Kind of reverse psychology.
Yeah.
And then we went on a bit of a run. But what was your memory of that run into the finals?
Can't wait for Mad Monday. Oh, look, again, I would say that my only memories of that series was what happened at the end. Oh. Yeah. We had got ourselves into a good position. And history would show that if we had got past the Storm that night, we were a chance. Because that's the year Smithy got rubbed out. But if that don't go any further than that, I think we'd have
Sharkies next week.
Yeah.
We would have beaten them. I reckon we would have given Manly a fair shake.
Yeah, we were a chance, but we just had to get past that night, and we didn't. So yeah, it was like I've won a few tight games, in fashion that I would hate to have been on the opposite team, and I got what it tasted like that night. Yeah, because we had the game won, and they got a ball late in the less than a minute to go, and I remember. I made an error in myself because I came out of. I remember Hodjo was outside me and I said, "Let's get up and get in their faces." And I don't know whether he mustn't have heard me because I went out to try and put pressure on him. He didn't come with me, and then therefore once it got to Inglis, or maybe it got just inside Inglis, they had a 3-on-2. So if I had held the line and slid across, might have been totally different. Who knows? But anyway, it's done now.
He probably would have steamrolled me, Greg, unless I'm being honest. He would have gone straight over me. No, I just remember Hodjo dummying to go in, and then I come flying in, and then they bloody slipped over or whatever. The bizarre thing about that game for me, and obviously you had so many finals games, it probably doesn't stand out as much for you, but I just felt like we had control of that game for like 75 minutes. I felt like we were the better side. I was almost at times thinking like surprised at how I felt we were better on a different level at that stage. But yeah, I just remember looking over it and seeing you devastated and going, oh man, this is not good.
Yeah.
Not good.
Like I said, that's probably the first time I'd lost a big game like that, and it obviously hurt.
Oh, mate,
And
unbelievable. It was a sad Monday, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you play your 300th game in 2009. What's it like to, young fella, grew up playing AFL to a degree, then you changed to league, to join the 300th game club? And I know you eventually joined the 350 club, but 300 games.
I think once you played that long, you don't think about the milestones. You just think about what your role and your responsibilities are. So getting to 300 was obviously a moment of reflection from the perspective that people talk about it all week going into the game. I remember my 300th game. It was at Newcastle, and the lights went out halfway through it. It was from a storm, and we ended up getting beat that night too. It was like the lights had gone out. We went back in the dressing rooms, and we were getting towelled up. And I'm thinking, let's just call it off.
Let's just back her up, boys.
So that was my 300th. That's probably the only reason I remember it, because it was the night the lights went out. I think it was my 300th. Yeah, might have been 250.
And was it 2010 you retired from representative footy?
No, I never retired from rep footy. So I went all the way through to 2011 as Broncos, Queensland, Australia. I thought about it. I thought about retiring.
There was a bit of speculation around that time.
Yeah, there was. I mean, like I said, my knee, like it slowed me down a little bit, and I probably just wasn't as effective as I had been. And by 2010, I was looking at a jersey over there before. That was out of that a whole 8 years. That was the only year we whitewashed. So we had a good year at Origin.
Yeah.
I think from memory, 2010, I think Ivan was coaching at the Bronx. I can't remember where we finished that year. And the World Cup was 2008, but then 2009, I can't remember. There was a member that, the Kiwis won a Four Nations here late in the game. That was 2010, I think. So we finished that year poor, but then by 2011, I remember I was at one of those army camps for pre-season, and it was about my 6th or 7th army camp.
Man, this is Hook Army Camp too, or was it?
No, Ivan, I think
Ivan
at the
was
time,
still there?
and I remember thinking, like, I'm not enjoying this one like I used to. Like I'm sitting there under the stars and it's pissing down rain. I've been walking.
Was this at Nogra, the one at Nogra?
No, this is up the coast.
Okay.
And it's pissing down rain. I'm cold. And I'm like, this is shit. I'm like, this is my last year, because that was my last year on my contract.
Yep.
And there was obviously a bit of talk around what I was going to do. Got to round 4 and I got sick of talking about it. I got sick of it being a distraction. So I just said, righto, I got to make a call whether I go again or whether I say. And I said, righto, round 4. I said, I'm done. This is my last year. And it was the best thing I did from the perspective of it took away all the distraction around talking about it. And what it did, I reckon I got another 5% effort out of myself all year, and I probably played the best footy I played for the Bronx for a long time. Origin, we had a win. We won the decider here. It was a game where we were up 24-0 or just 24-6 at half time. So that was
Was that the Matty Bowen intercept?
No, that was the one. That was the Jonathan Thurston green whistle night.
Oh,
yeah. So we won that series and then got to the finals that year, and that was my last ever game was here against the Dragons.
And you broke your jaw, your cheekbone.
Yeah. So again, I felt like we had momentum going into the finals, but it wasn't to be. I guess I finished at Suncorp on a high note, but it wasn't to be in terms of going all the way with the Premiership. But I was comfortable with how I finished at the Broncos, given I played some of the best footy I played for a long time. And then we still had to go over and play the Four Nations in the UK.
Yeah. So you could finish it on a kind of a high to a degree.
Yeah, we won that series over there, and so it was. I would say it would have been nice to sort of go a bit further in the Premiership, but wasn't to be. But I got to finish with Australia on a good note.
And so was it purely the retirement decision? Was it hard to come to? Easy? Did you have a moment?
I'd been thinking about it for a little bit, but the moment was at that army camp when I,
really?
well, just to the point where I used to go to those things and love the challenge and love the adversity. Where I'm just saying, which said to me, I probably wasn't willing to pay the price anymore. And so I said, righto, let's just pull the cord here and let's get going and try and, for me and for the team, make the most of the year we had. And I was still happy how it all ended.
Now, there's one of my favourite memories from yourself, and it was when you're playing Origin and something had happened, someone had hide, I'm not sure, but you decided to bomb straight back to them. Could you walk us through, I'm not sure, it would have been, 2009 maybe, 10?
Yeah, it might have been 9, I reckon. So a bit of miscommunication. The part where Pricey was knocked out.
Yeah.
Then one of the Blues players came over and sort of grabbed him to, well, what we thought was to check him, but I think he looked at him, sort of worked out he wasn't really conscious, and then just dropped him back to the ground. So there was a lot of boys fired up over that.
Yeah.
And at the time, the Blues were winning the game. I think they ended up winning that game, and we're coming down to the last set, so it all erupted. And all the big boys, and Hodjo was right in there, and then so when we get the penalty, they all say, just give them the ball back. So, and when I said to Smithy, who was going to kick the ball out, and then, I'm saying, just give them the ball back. So that, to me, meant tap it and throw it to I said, give them the ball back. The big boys want to get into them.
Yeah, okay.
So I said, just kick it out and then tap it and give it back to him. So, but he does the bomb.
Oh, yeah.
So poor old Kurt Gidley, the smallest guy in the team, cops the brunt.
Yeah.
So it's just my intent, and the intent from most of the team was not to go down and, dive on Kurt Gidley and pile on him. The intent was to give it to one of the big boys, and the big boys were going to, when I say get into them, it was more like just try and put a shot on without, taking their heads off.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was, it didn't go down the way it was meant to.
As a watcher, as a viewer, it went out down exactly the way I wanted it to.
Yeah, people loved it. Yeah.
What's personally been, because you were so, I guess, crucial in creating the initial part of that dynasty, and obviously other players as well. But what's your favourite memory from Origin for you personally?
It's hard to go past that because, like I said, it's such a critical moment. Because if that doesn't happen, my rep career is totally different, and for some other players as well.
As in the 2006 series?
Yeah. And look, we were lacking in a bit of belief. And the other part here too, Freddie had retired from rep football, Joe retired. So all of a sudden, these guys that were just starting out their career had talent. They just needed that little bit of belief. And we got that in the 06 series, and then all of a sudden, we got lucky from the perspective of, Smith's there, Slater, Inglis, Cronk comes along, Darius Boyd, Israel Folau was there for a period of time, so the list goes on. I would say for me, knowing what, I individually put into that 06 series and what others put into it to get that particular win and instill some belief in some of those younger guys, I think it was, it played its part.
What was it? I mean, when you're on the field and you're playing with guys like Smithy, Slater, Thurston initially, and then Cronk would have been off the bench, I think, at that stage. What was there any different feeling in regards to the smoothness at which you played, if you know what I mean? Because that's arguably the greatest spine ever put together. Yeah, well, I think obviously Mel helped, from the perspective of Mel wasn't a halfback or a hooker or a fullback, but he was very good at bringing a team together. And once everyone understood each other's games, we knew what our roles were, and we just went out and we executed it. And the other part to that was when we kept winning back-to-back series, New South Wales had no answers. They kept changing their team. Yeah. And that just worked into our favour. So it's just ridiculous when you look back at the record, what happened, 8 in a row, and then 12 out of 13, just phenomenal. But you would have to say in history that the calibre of players with Thurston, Smith, Slater, Inglis,
Cronk came along, and then there was Darius Boyd in there. So it just I think it's just a bit like you look at the St George period in those 11 years of premierships, just some really once in a generation players coming together at one time.
And what was it like playing against Joey in that 2005 and 4 series with Freddie as well?
Yeah, well look, he's obviously. I think he was the most complete player I ever played with or against. Just that there was nothing in the game he couldn't do. He was a great defender, had a great kicking game, goal kicking, passing, running. He had it all. So I remember in the 05 series, like he was coming back from an knee operation himself, and he was down on form. And he was looking for a bit of belief himself, a bit of confidence, and it came down to a 40-20 he kicked in Sydney in game 2, and then he got that, and that was almost like a light bulb moment, and then he just cut us to pieces after that. So I think when those guys, like how good they are, but also they've got the experience in that arena over a more inexperienced team, it plays its part.
Oh mate, I mean, just the fact that the yarn around, even like with the Alfie situation as well, coming back and Joey doing his knee and coming back, it's just Origin is just a different. I don't know how it keeps writing these scripts. It's absolutely. Oh man, I cannot wait for next week, mate. Now with the retirement, did you struggle at all in retirement in regards to missing the boys and the banter or anything like that?
No, I'd always had sort of, I guess, things away from the game that kept me interested, and I was looking forward to sinking my teeth into those and just doing something a bit different. So I like all the lessons I've learnt from being in that environment around discipline and working hard and working together as a team and leadership, all that stuff you can transfer over to any other business interest. So I've really been sort of enjoyed that part, stimulated from that perspective. But, I was always going to be still part of the game. Which I played for so long, obviously working with 9, working at the Broncos, still doing a bit there at the QRL. So still in and around the game, but I've got a lot of other interests that I had before I retired that I was looking forward to experimenting with.
And looking forward not to getting absolutely bashed in contact sessions.
Well, one of the things I do miss is when you see teams win big games and you see the elation and you miss that, right? But equally, it's I look at the team that's just lost a big game and go, I don't miss that.
No. And you had so much success with Wayne. Why do you reckon there was so much success with Wayne during that long period, especially pre-2007?
Oh, look, there's no doubt there was some good talent there at the club, but as he's shown over the years, it doesn't matter what talent's in his system, he still finds a way to win. Yeah. Look, I just think he keeps it simple, but he makes sure the individuals are disciplined, but he also looks to improve the individual off the field, which in turn makes them a better footballer on the field. And team is always something that he comes first. So that was we always had that. It was always called like the Broncos way. So we trained hard. We trained hard. We had some talent in the squads, but we always came together and we made sure that one of the things I reckon he does he plays a lot of games, so in his training. So he wants competitors. So he creates games where you have to compete. If you don't compete, you'll get shown up. And if you're not competing, he'll let you know about it.
And I'll ask all the boys this, favourite rapper of all time.
Favourite rapper?
Yeah. Oh, come on. I reckon I remember you in the gym with the music on at one stage, rapping a bit of a Biggie, Tupac.
Mate, that was when, at the start of my career, we used to put on tunes. Well, actually, you know what? There was no tunes. You used to play cards on the bus, right? Yeah. But then sort of end of my carear, everyone had the headphones on and the rap music was on.
Well, Dan Baker remember when he didn't let us put music on? Because he was like, we're here just to lift weights. Yeah. And then eventually
some tunes got in there, but then the music started evolving from a bit of country into a bit of hip-hop and then into rap. Rap's not really my domain, but my kids are into it. It's obviously where the world's heading. But
favourite musician?
Favourite musician?
Yeah.
Mate, I'm a bit of I don't have one particular person. Like I love a bit of Coldplay, those guys. I love their concerts. And Bruce Springsteen, mate. I sort of I chop and change whoever's, you know. So, mate, we've had plenty of sing-alongs up here to different people, but I remember when we used to call you Derek Zoolander.
That's not true.
That's true.
That's fake news.
Blue Steel.
That's fake news. Fake news.
Blue Steel. Yeah.
Oh, that's the best. Mate, favourite movie of all time?
Again, I don't have one particular one. What's one I could keep watching? Like, you know, there's some movies you can just put them on and no matter how many times you watch them, you just get into them all the time. Yep. Like Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, mate.
I can watch that and still get into it.
Everyone says that's the number one show. Everyone always says Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, but in terms, like I don't get hooked up or passionate about one individual, whether it's a movie or whether it's someone who sings, but whoever does a decent job, I'll enjoy it. Mate,
thank you so much for spending so much time talking about your career. I appreciate it, and thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure, mate. It's good to see you again.
Thanks, brother. Boom.